Well, welcome back to another International Commission podcast with Lil Brookie and Lil Bucky. This podcast, you know that parable Jesus told about the man who found a treasure in the field and he sold everything he had to have that treasure?
Yeah.
Finding this podcast, the fact that you've discovered this podcast is nothing like that story, but it will be good. Welcome to it. On this podcast, we talk about a variety of different topics that are relevant to our life and ministry with International Commission. So you can kind of get a behind-the-scenes view of all sorts of things that go into an international ministry like ours, including just experiences that we have, favorite things that we have, crazy things that happen, but also some really important things like learning about who it is that we're trying to reach with the gospel. So we're going to talk about all those sorts of things today. Brooke, tell us a little bit more about what segments that we have.
Yeah, for today, we have 3 segments. The first will be a discussion on unreached peoples versus unengaged peoples, which if you are familiar with, the mission world and everything, these probably are not new terms to you. But if you have not heard these terms before, we are going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to share a really cool national-to-national testimony and then end with top 5 things segment. And today we'll be talking about our favorite tourist attractions or amazing sites that we've seen. And we're excited about this one.
Yes, we are. Well, let's take it away.
Learn something.
So we're first going to talk about unengaged and unreached people groups, what they are and where they are. And so we're also going to give you some resources that you can go and learn about UPGs, and UUPGs are what they are, the little acronym. And so first, let's define a people group, that in itself. And so this is from peoplegroups.org. And it defines a people group as an ethno-linguistic group with a common self-identity that is shared by the various members. For strategic purposes, it is the largest group within which the gospel can spread without encountering barriers of acceptance or understanding. And so peoplegroups.org kind of differs on the amount of people groups it thinks that there are in the world. Mm-hmm. According to peoplegroups.org, it says that there are 12,160 people groups, but according to Joshua Project and a few others, I think there's actually a lot more, around 17,000.
17,000 usually.
Yeah.
I hear, yeah.
Yeah, and so that accounts for, around the 8 billion people we have here on Earth. And so an unreached people group, a UPG, a people group is considered unreached when there is no indigenous community of believing Christians able to engage this people group with church planting. Technically speaking, the percentage of evangelical Christians in this people group is less than 2%. And so of the UPGs, there's around 7,294 unreached people groups, which is around 4.8 billion people, which is a lot of people, around half of our population. And then among unreached, unengaged people groups, this is where there's no church planting strategy consistent with evangelical faith and practice underway. Gathering believers, planting churches, nothing like that. And so around of the UUPGs, there's 3,203 unreached, unengaged people groups, which is 283 million people. And so I also looked at advancingNativeMissions.com on these terms. And so, yeah, unengaged. This is a pastor, Rick Warren. He describes unengaged peoples as a group, as one with no believer, no Bible, and no body of Christ. In other words, there is absolutely no church presence. And so that is kind of the introduction to unreached versus unengaged people groups.
So what's the importance of identifying people groups and their status of unreached or unengaged?
Yeah. I mean, what is your immediate thought on that?
I would say it really helps us aim our efforts, for one thing. Us just being the church at large, and then particularly local churches, sending agencies, strategy agencies, Bible translators, church planners, pioneers, anybody engaged in reaching the unreached. It gives us somewhere specific to to aim for.
Right.
So what language groups still need scripture or the oral stories translated? What places have no Christian been, and they just by necessity need a foreigner to come and introduce the gospel so that we can eventually see an indigenous movement growing there. And just as we consider the task of taking the gospel, making disciples of all ethnicities, all nations, we kind of have to know where we are. What is still left to do once we realized, around the 1970s, a lot of missiologists, churches, missionaries realized there has been a Christward movement, or at least a proclamation of the gospel in every geopolitical nation on earth, by borders.
Right.
But that's not all. God has expressed his desire to have worshipers in every people group on earth. And so there are still many that, even in some reached countries, like Germany or England or the United States, where there are still many unreached ethnicities there. There are populations that have their own unique culture, and usually their language, that there is no indigenous church there. And so some of it's because of migration, but some of it is just, ethnic native peoples in those places that do not have the word of God or a growing discipleship community. And then also just helping us to learn about all of those other cultures, helping us to know how we can communicate the gospel according to their traditions, values, things like that. Just finding ways to most clearly present the gospel where they'll understand it the best.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. What is your guess on the top 3 most unreached countries? Not just the unreached peoples, but unreached countries.
North Korea, Afghanistan, I will say Turkmenistan.
Good guesses. You got one of them right.
Oh, yeah?
Afghanistan. And that is the most, and this is according to stratus.earth. It's a really cool website. According to stratus.earth, Afghanistan is the #1 most unreached country. Following that is Yemen and Somalia.
Really?
Yeah, so you can check out stratus.earth, and it gives in number of reached the order. And so, I mean, United States is surprisingly actually not the very end of the list. There's a few that are after us. Finland, I think, is the very most reached. But, even among these reached countries, there's a lot of unreached peoples within these countries, which is really cool. And so we have unique opportunities, even where we live, to be able to reach the unreached peoples. Not all of them, of course, because there are many that will never leave their country, that are going to stay put in their country. And so we do need those pioneering people, those apostolic leaders, to go to those places where they see there's a major gap here. But we have unique opportunities in the United States, in Australia, across Europe, where people have migrated, refugees have left. And, I think the Lord does that very sovereignly so that the people who are considered unreached can have access to the gospel.
Yeah.
Especially, in Afghanistan, we know lots of things happen there, and refugees have fled to all different parts of the world. I know that they're in Germany, they're in Italy, in England, and in the United States. There are many pockets all across these areas now where, one of the most unreached people groups have come to, which is really amazing that God has brought some of the most unreached peoples to places where we are reached, where the gospel is, around and thriving, where there are churches around every corner. And so we have these unique opportunities to be able to go to these unreached people groups, and that are now not unengaged. There are now opportunities for them to hear the gospel. They now have access to the gospel, which is really amazing. And so you can find a lot of these resources, peoplegroups.org, joshuaproject.net. You can find a lot of information there. Stratus.earth is a really cool website as well. and then upgnorthamerica.com, and that will tell you where in North America there are unreached peoples. And
That's
so,
amazing
yeah.
because especially if you live in a metropolitan area, I guarantee you that there are migrants there. Some of them are just immigrated. Some of them are asylum seekers or refugees. Some of those are the same, but not necessarily. But especially among refugees, people come here and they've been resettled from very, very difficult places. They don't know our culture. They
Right.
likely don't know our language. And they may come here and live within their pocket communities
Yep.
without engaging or
Mhm.
assimilating with other English-speaking Americans. And they need help to know how things work, just basic stuff. They need a friend to come alongside them and help them figure out just how to make a living, how to do basic things. And that's a
Yeah.
tremendous opportunity to share the love and the message of Jesus with people. So
Right.
there's probably a church or a nonprofit or even a government organization program
Hmm.
uh, where you live that can help you find ways to engage with them.
Yeah.
Or they may be your neighbors, in which case you just need to make some friends.
Right. And among these groups, take a friend with you. I mean, that's smart to do anyways. But take somebody with you, take your spouse, and just welcome them. And I think that will be really meaningful for them. And, among these people groups, there's some people who've lived here, migrated here a long time ago,
Yeah.
and they don't know the language still, which, that happens, but they also have never been invited into an American home, which, I mean, that this is coming from our very efficient and less than hospitable mindset. Not everyone is not hospitable, but these are people who are very hospitable. They're always
Yeah.
welcoming people. They're very communal. And so inviting them into your home or even just going to their home, I mean, they are very welcoming, and just spend time with them, try and get to know them. And we have countless of apps, Google Translate, Microsoft Translate, that can help you even have the starts of conversations. And if you look on these websites, you can find there are a lot of resources in lots of languages that have been translated into these unreached people groups. And so, where there are opportunities for us right around us. And so I thought we could also talk about places where you can find unreached peoples, even just among the big cities where, maybe someone is in kind of a smaller neighborhood where it's a lot of the same population. Where should people go to find these unreached people groups if they're in the bigger cities or if they're near bigger cities? What do you think, Bucky?
I think a good starting place, if you don't already know kind of where they are located, where they're being settled, you can ask one of those organizations that is helping out. There is, let me look the name of one program here real quick. Called the Welcome Corps,
Okay.
and that is a federal government program that is oriented toward finding sponsors for
Mm-hmm.
refugee families, but they would be able to tell you kind of where there is a kind of a hot spot of certain uh, refugee people groups in particular.
Okay.
Others is hopefully there are churches that are
Yes.
reaching out to these people and you can get plugged in. Uh, Close to us in Dallas, there is a ministry called Northwest Community Center that
Hmm.
is an extension of a ministry at a church, and they do all sorts of things for refugee communities all around the city. And they're a great resource here because they're doing basic resource distribution, they're doing ESL classes, they have conversation clubs that are really just oriented to building friendships and
Wow.
just kind of talking about life and helping people practice their English and
Hmm.
learning a little bit about their culture.
Yeah.
They have baby showers for new moms, all sorts of other things, after school clubs for kids. And so there are probably organizations like that where you are. So you can just look those up
Hmm.
and ask them where are these people located. You might also just already know that there are certain parts of town where there's a large Hispanic or South Asian or East Asian community
Hmm.
and go and shop there.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's exciting. I love going to Asian markets and Latino markets.
It's almost like you're
And,
stepping into a different country whenever you come
yeah.
into these stores. That's what I was going to say is international grocery stores. If you live in a big city, chances are you have an international grocery store that you can go to. We have an Asian district in Oklahoma City. And so if you go there, we have Indian markets, we have Indian bazaar, we have an Afghan market, and we have so many international places here. Also, parks. If you go to parks, there's a lot of families, especially women, take their children there because a lot
Mhm.
of times, especially among Muslim communities, the women don't work, and so they take their children, young children, to parks. And so if you happen to go by parks and see them, that's a good opportunity, especially if you have children or dogs, you can go there, try and interact with them, say hi. Even if they don't speak the language, you can still be there, be present, try and communicate in some way. And a lot of times, their children will be learning English through school. And so utilize the children as a
Yeah.
translator.
A lot of
Yeah,
times kids will pick up English a lot faster than their
fast.
parents will, and they are also kind of liaisons and ambassadors for their families and for the
Hmm.
culture where they're going, because they're learning a lot in school. They're interacting with other American kids in school, and
Right,
a lot of times they bear a lot of the responsibility of helping their parents kind of assimilate into
right.
our systems and culture. So a lot of times, yeah, you can connect through kids at
Mhm.
schools or, like you said, in parks,
Yeah.
places like that.
The last
Um,
one is universities.
yeah.
Universities will host many foreign students every year. And so if you connect with a university that's near you, you can ask about what programs they have. Because I know here in Oklahoma City, there's quite a few of the universities that have different programs where you can sponsor a student, where you can just get to know them, you can invite them in. They have events where you can go and hang out with this student, and that's a great way to share the gospel with them. And a lot of times they'll be from unreached places. They will be coming from all over the world, and you have no idea, hey, maybe this is an unreached people. And the last one also is just prayer, asking the Lord to bring you to unreached peoples, give you encounters and
Oh,
interactions with
oh,
them.
he will. So you better be ready when you pray that.
No kidding.
I want to say something on universities. Most universities, especially major ones, do have an international student program.
Mhm.
They have incentives for doing that. There are companies overseas, especially from in India, that have kind of a cross placement program. And it's very, very common for students to come here from Korea or India or even Iran.
Mhm.
And so you will encounter people from unreached people groups
Yeah.
from those nations who are educated. A lot
Mhm.
of times they are from more of a privileged background.
Mhm.
They may be from a higher caste in their society. And when they go back home, they will be people of influence, most
Right.
likely. And so if
Yeah.
we can reach those people with the gospel, if they become followers of Jesus and they go back home, they will have an incredible opportunity to reach their own people. The fact that I think it's 80 something percent of international students report that they never step foot into an American home tells me that we're really missing incredible
Yeah.
opportunities to make friends, to learn about other cultures, and also to reach some unreached peoples through really an incredible avenue of people
Right.
that are probably going to go back home and have influence there. So just different ways of thinking about the different reasons that people are in our country or in another country. If you live in a place where you have internationals coming there, they may be refugees, they may just have migrated for work or a better life, or they may be students who will go back. And so I think that's really exciting.
Yeah.
And I have found it to be a lot of fun to engage with international students and just invite them to my home, invite them to, like, if you need an excuse, if you don't know how to break the ice, you can invite people to learn about a holiday. It could just be an American cultural thing. It can be a Christian holiday, which is even better, and just teaching them about it and what it means. You've got a ready-built conversation about the gospel right there.
Yeah, speaking of, you know what is coming up very soon is both Ramadan
Yeah.
and Easter.
Yeah.
So those are perfect opportunities. And, I read even the other day, I think it was Global Frontier, they had posted something about, Ramadan, and, Muslim people are very open during Ramadan to talk about, spiritual things. And so that's a great way to engage with them. They fast during that time, and so you can tell them why you fast. Why do Christians fast?
Yeah.
And and then you can talk about Easter since it's so close to Easter, and why we celebrate Easter, why we what was Passover, and why did Jesus celebrate Passover? Why was that significant? And so, these are really good opportunities coming up. Yeah, and around Christmas time, around Thanksgiving, there's a lot of different opportunities just around the holidays to ask them, hey, do you know what this is about? Do you know why we celebrate this as Christians, as followers of Jesus? And sometimes they'll know, sometimes they won't know, or they'll know a corrupted version of it.
Yeah,
So you
usually
can tell
people
them
have some concept of it, especially students, because they've studied the U.S. and they have some familiarity with our
Right.
culture. They usually have, like you said, kind of a distorted view of
Right.
what these things mean, and it's not their fault. They don't live here, and so they don't know what it. But I would say many Americans who were born and raised here also don't know the real reason behind some of
Yep.
our Christian holidays.
It's true. Yeah, and so those are some opportunities to kind of think about unengaged, unreached peoples here in the United States. We also know, and we can go into a much deeper conversation another time about, even the 1040 window in these unreached peoples that have absolutely zero access to the gospel, where no one is going to them. And so maybe we can hit on that another time and kind of talk more about that and how people do need to go to these places. It's great to be able to reach people here in the United States that have come here, but there are still those peoples, thousands of people in other countries all over the world that have never heard of the name of Jesus. And they need to hear about it. And so again, here's some resources, and we can put those in the description as well. But peoplegroups.org, joshuaproject.net, stratus.earth, and upgnorthamerica.com. Do you have any resources, Bucky?
Yeah, there's Prayercast that helps. So these are good resources to help you learn about other countries. There's a few others that are more focused on how to pray for some countries and peoples, like Prayercast. They have guided videos that'll guide you through praying for certain peoples or issues or topics in the world. Operation World is a great resource. They publish a big, thick book that has information about different countries and cultures all around the world, so you can learn about them, and there are specific prayer prompts as well. And then Open Doors is another resource. You just look for Open Doors, find their website, and you can learn more about persecution, places that have religious persecution, and it's kind of across the board. It's persecution against any kind of religion, but you can learn about some of the places where Christians endure the most persecution and can be really difficult to reach as well.
So check out those, and let's move on to the next segment.
Right.
It's story time.
Bucky now has an end-to-end testimony to share with us from Japan. And if you're new to us here on the podcast, end-to-end stands for national to national. And these are partnerships among local leaders all across the globe who commit to praying for the lost through a tool called Operation Andrew. and then they go and share the gospel with people they've been praying for. And these are very similar to our international trips we take, just minus a sending team from America. But our end-to-end do utilize and host believers from surrounding nations, which is really cool. And I think a few years ago, I had a humble revelation that the USA is not the only country with missionaries that sends out missionaries. Very small-minded of me, but I realized that the God who has revealed his heart to people here in America also reveals his heart to people all around the world too. And so that's kind of a segue into this end-to-end testimony. And so share with us this story, Bucky.
I will. Now I've got all sorts of other thoughts to talk about, but we can save those for another podcast. But I'll give you one little did you know. And that is that the global mission sending movement is kind of moved to the south and east. Not that it's moved there, but countries in the global south and east are beginning to send lots and lots of missionaries around the world, including to the United States. And I'll have to save some stories for another time that I've met some of those who are here in the United States as evangelistic missionaries.
Wow.
And that's been really humbling as well.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So while we're talking about these unreached people groups who are here among us, well, we are considered that to many others sending people here. So one particular country that hosts lots of unreached people is Japan. And so this story really ties in well with other things we've been talking about as well, because on this end-to-end partnership last month, believers from churches in Indonesia and Malaysia went to Japan to share the gospel.
Okay.
And we think this sounds really unique, but it's happening all the time. And I just love that we get to be connected to a ministry that is helping to equip and enable people to do this. Mm-hmm. So they went to Japan to share Jesus, particularly at and around Osaka University, to talk to students. There's a likelihood that people there speak English, and they're young and at a point in their lives where they're more open to learning about the truth. They reported that the Japanese people were kind of closed off and unapproachable. A lot of people said they were too busy to listen. If they did listen, they only gave them like 3 minutes to share and then kind of left. So some of the challenge is cultural, but there are also government rules against proselytization or trying to convert someone. And so they're very strict. So they had to kind of work around that and be creative, but also people are very aware of this. They don't really appreciate what they perceive as somebody coming in and trying to change their mind. Nevertheless, with all those challenges and the great distance and I'm sure expense that these people from Malaysia and Indonesia incurred, they got to have 163 gospel conversations, which is awesome in a place like that. And they saw 67 people come to Christ.
Wow.
So that's
so
huge.
Great.
That's huge if you consider what they were facing. And I am just so inspired by their faithfulness, by their zeal and excitement and their love to go and take the message of the gospel to Japan.
Yeah.
Because it's such an unlikely, if you think about it, it's such an unlikely thing to do, especially if you're on these islands way to the south, and that Japan is a hard place to go, and especially a hard place to go and just strike up conversations with strangers and try to share the gospel with them, but they did it. Yeah. So I'm sitting here thinking, there's no excuses for me to not go anywhere else.
Yep.
No
excuse.
And it also goes to show that God can work in impossible situations.
Yes.
Any salvation is a miracle that God does in a heart, but man, especially in places where it's so hard and just so, according to the flesh, so unlikely, so impossible. I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah, that's so cool, especially in Japan. Japan is, I hear, such a dark place. Yeah. So closed off to the gospel. And so that's really encouraging to hear that so many people came to faith in Jesus through these believers. And So, it's just encouraging, and we need to pray that the church in Japan will have the boldness, and they will
Yes,
diligently pray.
there are churches there. There are native churches there. There are Brazilian churches there, other foreign churches. There are American missionaries there. I'm sure others from the West or other places. I don't know who all has churches and missionary work going on there, but they are there, but it's very difficult. And I hear routinely reports from like International Mission Board missionaries that it's very difficult, and it's hard to get into a Japanese home. It's hard to build relationships with them. If they do, they can be very fruitful, but it can take a long time. So to see that these people just acted on faith, they went, they shared, and they still saw 67 people come to Christ is just amazing.
Amazing.
But we also need to pray that those people that have come to Christ will find Christian community.
Right.
That will accept them, that will help them grow. So that can be very difficult following Christ in a culture that is cold and hostile to doing so,
Jesus,
to Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great story.
Top 5 things.
So for our last segment, this one's going to be a little more casual. We're going to talk about our top 5 tourist attractions or landmark sites that we've been to. Now, kind of like with things to pack that we've done another time, top 5s are hard to choose because I don't know if my criteria is favorites or you should see this or just the most grandiose and breathtaking or the most historic. I got to give a disclaimer here. When I was choosing, my criteria shifted while I was trying to pick. So anyway, my top 5 don't have any particular rank. Well, they do. They are. I did rank them in order of just awesomeness, but the reason that they're awesome, I don't know. It kind of varies. Yeah, and I'll explain why.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we should go back and forth.
Okay.
And I think we both know our number ones because they're going to be the same.
It's got to be.
Yeah, and so
okay, 1, 2, 3.
Petra.
Yep. That's what
I knew it. Petra. So Bucky and I in 2022, we got to go to Jordan together through IC, and our trip leader JT, we begged him for a long time. We said, JT, please take us to Petra. Please take us to Petra. I personally for years have thought Petra was so cool. I don't remember the first time I heard about it, but since I heard about it and saw pictures of it, I was so amazed by it. And if you don't know what Petra is, it's in the southern part of Jordan, and it is a city in rock, completely carved into rock. And so you might have it on your mind more of the history of it, Bucky, some of it. And so, but it is so old, incredibly old. I mean, I think what I read earlier was it kind of dates back to maybe around 7,000 BC, somewhere around there.
Very old. Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, goodness. I could go for hours. I'll try to keep it to a couple of minutes here. But Petra is a very, very ancient site. It has been inhabited by several different peoples, but it's most famous for the Nabatean architecture. Yeah. So the Nabateans were a group of nomadic Arabs that settled there in this canyon, and they carved these huge facades into the rock face, but they actually have caves and structures, behind them. And actually, not only just caves and structures, because some are tombs, some are temples, but there's actually an entire city.
An entire city. It's
an entire city in the rock. So some of it you can see the facades outside as you walk like through the canyon and the valley, but they don't let outsiders, they don't let foreigners see most of it, which is mind-blowing because it is massive. You could spend days walking around just seeing all of these.
It's a city. It's huge.
It's a city. But there's apparently even more of it. But for most tourists, what they know of it is that the Nabateans not only carved these incredible structures into the rock that are just massive, but they also have a water system that it doesn't work anymore. There was a big earthquake sometime in the ancient past, and it cracked a lot of their cisterns and pipes and stuff, so it doesn't work anymore. There is still a trickle of water, and you can see it in some places, but you can see where some of it flowed. There's channels in some of the walls and the slot canyon leading to it. And anyway, but they had this entire system of water reservoirs and tanks and flow. And so they had running fresh water in their city. Yeah, all through the year. Obviously, in the desert's very dry, so when you have a water source, you need to protect it and preserve it. It's also along a major trade route of the Silk Road, and it is one of the southernmost points of the King's Highway, which, if you know what that is, if you don't, I'm not going to go all into it. But the King's Highway stretched all the way up through Jordan. It was a major trade route, and so you can imagine when you're standing there in Petra, all of these ancient peoples of all the empires, that you can think of, Babylon and the Persians and so on, coming through there.
Yeah.
So people consider the Nabateans there these just purveyors of culture. To me, one of the coolest things, besides just the grandeur of the whole place, and that it's mind-blowing architecturally and also naturally.
Yes.
So what I think is so cool about Petra is that you can look around and see all these amazing things that man has built and the amazing things that God has built. When you walk back to the city, you walk through a slot canyon that most scientists think was formed very rapidly, just because of the structure of it, preservation of it. Here's what the local legend is, y'all. The Arabs call this area Wadi Musa. What's that mean, Brooke?
Well, Musa is Moses.
Yes, this is the waters of Moses. They say that Petra is one of the places where Moses struck the rock and the waters came out.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what carved the canyon. That's what the local legends say. And this is not Hebrews, this is not Christians. A lot of them do ascribe to this now, but the Arab legend is that this is where Moses struck the rock and the waters came out, and that the Hebrews settled there for some of their time during the 40 years. There's evidence that some of the structures have Egyptian and Hebrew influence in their style. And so anyway, something that ancient that's been lost and rediscovered, there's always debate about it. But I choose to believe that is true, or part of it is true, that the Hebrews, that at least that the Hebrews were there, and it was crazy to be in a place where God's people had wandered in the desert, and God was with them.
It is so fascinating. The city is absolutely amazing, and you can just see how intelligent the people were in building this. I mean, I watched a documentary on it once, and the treasury, if you don't know anything about it, look up the treasury. That's kind of the most famous point.
If you've seen Indiana Jones.
Yeah, you'll know. The treasury, they carved it from the top down, and it just, I mean, absolutely amazing how they worked, and it's so beautiful, and it's been preserved for so long, and it's just absolutely amazing. And part of the documentary, it talked about something that they had found in part of the city, and it looked like it would have had a water system, like it looked like it would have been a spa area. And so, and part of it was a heated spa area. And so just, I don't know, this is so cool. Everything about this place was so cool. And I wish we could have spent so much longer there. I would have loved to stay there for days and days. It was really cool. And so, yeah, that is definitely Bucky and I's number one.
I could go on and on. You can hike and climb up these huge hills and mountains and just see more and more and more. Just there's Roman architecture there too. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
There's an amphitheater. I mean, it's an amazing kind of grab bag of ancient cultures.
Yeah.
And just mind-blowing stories and legend of what might have happened there, who might have been there, and it's just really
thousands of years.
It's mind-blowing. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's lots that could have happened there.
It is also Arrakis.
It is. Yes,
So,
it is.
and it looks and feels like it too.
It is. Yes, for you Dune
You feel like you're among a Fremen city.
Yes.
With all of the homes carved into the rocks. Oh, and so there are still Bedouin tribes that live at Petra. So when you're walking through, you'll see off to the side of the path, you'll see doors. Some of them have a little solar panel out front. There are people that still live in these caves today and trace their genealogy way, way back. So it's just
crazy.
Everything about it is cool.
Yep. Okay, Bucky, what is your number 2 pick?
Okay, my number 2 is also in Jordan, and it is Bethany beyond the Jordan.
Oh, nice.
Do you look in your Bibles and see what happened at Bethany beyond the Jordan? This was the place where John baptized Jesus. And man, there's a crazy and hilarious story about how we went down there, but I'll have to tell that another time. But a few of our team members got to go to Bethany beyond Jordan just kind of on a whim almost. I didn't realize the authenticity of this place and just the significance of it, or how we would feel when we got there. It was incredible to be in a place where we know Jesus stood and began his ministry, and God spoke from heaven, and John said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." That was a really, really cool place to go, and I'm super glad I got to see that.
I unfortunately was not among the group that got to go into the Jordan River, sadly. That probably would have been on my top 5 list, but I was not able to go to that. But it's okay.
You still know Jesus.
I still know
you
Jesus,
know the
yeah.
guy.
I do.
You know, going to a place he was cool, but
yes,
if you know him, that's even cooler.
Yes, that you're right. My number 2 is the Great Wall of China. And of course, China.
That's very cool.
Yes, and so I got to go there, I think it was 2016, and it was really amazing getting to. So we take a little ski lift up to it, and then you get to take a little slide. What are they called? Like a toboggan, not a toboggan, I don't know, something like that down. And it was really fun. But just being on there, just walking, just knowing how much history you're standing on. And that was kind of how I felt in Petra as well. And I think just being in these areas of the world where there's so much history, and coming from a country where there is just only a few hundred years of history that we get to see, that we, know about. And then going to these civilizations where there is thousands and thousands of years of history that you get to witness and just be a part of is really cool. And so the Great Wall of China was definitely one of my top picks. It was really cool. It would have been number 1 for the long time, but Petra squeezed its way to the top. But these are also, 2 wonders of the world. So, that was my number 2.
My number 3 will surprise you for 2 reasons.
Okay.
One is because it should be number 1. The reason it's not is just because I'm such a history nerd and I love being somewhere with biblical history. Like this so to me, the significance of Petra and Bethany beyond the Jordan pushed them to the top. But my number 3 is Mount Everest.
Oh.
It's got to be on the list.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I did not climb Mount Everest. We took a flight there, but I saw it with my naked eyes, and it was just incredible to buzz the Himalayas. What is mind-blowing about that is if you're at cruising altitude and you look out to the side and you still have to look up to see the peaks of the mountains, your brain can't handle that.
That is wild.
It just doesn't compute. And then you look down and just see the glaciers and the valleys, and it's really mind-blowing.
That is really cool. Yeah, that definitely deserves to be on the list. My number 3 is similar to yours as a huge attraction to people, but also very naturally coming about, is the Grand Canyon, which I know a lot of people would say that as their top 5, but it really is absolutely amazing. Whenever I saw it, it looked like a picture. It didn't look real. How amazing it was. And we got the chance, it was a friend and I, we got the chance to hike into the canyon. And so that was really cool, getting to be in the canyon looking up as
I
well.
bet that's a lot cooler. I've just seen it from the top, and it was pretty breathtaking.
Yeah, it is
That would be cool.
breathtaking. But yeah, we went about 4 miles into the canyon, and when I got to the bottom there, I realized that I have to go 4 miles back up out of the canyon. And so going down was way easier. Going back up, it was a while. It took a while, but it was definitely worth it. It was beautiful getting to see the Grand Canyon and just the hand of God in working there. And so, man, it's amazing. If you haven't been able to go to the Grand Canyon and you're in the United States, it is definitely worth the trip. It is so breathtaking. Number 4,
The Cologne Cathedral
Cologne Cathedral.
in Cologne, Germany. It's 515 feet tall at its spires. It is the tallest twin-spired church in the whole world. It's the second tallest in Europe after Ulm. There's a cathedral I used to go to all the time, actually. And it's the third tallest of any kind of church on the planet.
Wow.
So it's not just because it's big that it's cool, but because it's over 700 years old.
That's also very cool.
And it's a Gothic cathedral. I love Gothic architecture and art. And so it's been well preserved there. It's also been restored a bunch of times. It's been under construction or renovation for that whole 700 years, which is kind of funny. So when I feel bad about like a video project or something, or a house repair that's taken me a little while, I think it hasn't been 700 years.
Has not been 700
It actually did pause for a while, but it has been being built in some state for that long. But that makes you feel really good when you climb the stairs in one of the spires. You can climb up that 515 feet on a skinny spiral staircase. You can see the bell tower, and you can go up to the top and see a view of the city, of the Rhine, and just the bridges and other historic parts of the city, which has a lot of Roman and ancient Hebrew architecture that has been excavated underneath the city. So Cologne's a really cool city for a lot of different reasons, but this cathedral is huge. It's beautiful. It's ornate. And inside the cathedral is just really, really beautiful architecture and art in there. And its claim to fame, besides its size and grandeur and historicity, is that they say that they have the bones of the Magi in there.
Whoa,
so you can go in and
quite a
see
claim.
you can see the gold ossuary where it is, but pilgrims have been coming there for I don't know how long to see this gold box that they say they have the bones of the Magi in there.
I would love to go and see this. I'm looking at pictures of it now, and it is beautiful.
It is. It's amazing. Yeah.
I've always been fascinated with cathedrals and the Catholic churches and everything. I think they're so beautiful. My dad and I actually, just in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there's quite a few, but we went into these churches just to look at them because I think they're beautiful, and I love the Gothic architecture as well. I thought it was really cool for many years, and so that's a cool one.
One of the things I love about it, I mean, I just love that it's ornate and complex, but and I love the structure of it. I love learning about and just conceiving in my mind the fact that all of it was hand carved over hundreds of years, and that people lived their entire lives seeing this being built, or some people spent their whole lives working on it. It's just sort of crazy.
Wow.
But also the fact that inside most of the art, well, outside too, a lot of the sculpture represents Bible stories and Bible characters, and it was a way for people who were not literate to learn and remember the Bible. And so I think that's pretty cool.
That is
There's people debate, and I mean, I even sometimes kind of, go back and forth in my mind about how expensive they were and what it took to build them when people were living in poverty and death and plague all around it, looking at it and thinking, well, there's all of our country's money. But at the same time, or maybe on the other side of the coin, they were built to glorify God and to try to capture the splendor of God's glory and heaven on earth. So they are amazing places where you can't help If you know the Lord, you can't help but walk into a cathedral and just think about the glory of God.
Yeah, definitely. All right, my number 4, also from China, the Terracotta Warriors.
Oh, man.
These were so cool. I did not know that we were going to go here. And so this is in Xi'an, China. And my uncle, who worked with International Commission for a long time, he took me here. Yeah, he had a friend who used to work there and everything, and so she gave us a tour. And so if you don't know about the Terracotta Army, I'm going to give you a little brief history of it. So the Terracotta Army is a collection of terracotta sculptures depicting the armies of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. It is a form of funerary art buried with the emperor in 210 to 209 BC with the purpose of protecting him in his afterlife. So just thousands and thousands and thousands of them. It was crazy. And so the figures dating from approximately the late 200s BC were discovered in 1974 by local farmers in Lingtong County outside of Xi'an in China. And yeah, that was cool. They were digging a well. I learned that it was these brothers that were digging a well, and then they found one of these soldiers, and there had been, rumors of finding fragments of these and everything, but they found some of these. And so the figures vary in height according to their rank, the tallest being among the generals. And the figures include warriors, chariots, and horses. And estimates from 2007 were that there were 3 pits containing the Terracotta Army that hold more than 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots with 520 horses, and 150 cavalry horses, the majority of which remain in these pits near Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. And other non-military terracotta figures have been found in their pits, including officials, acrobats, strongmen, and musicians, which was pretty cool. But it was really cool. So I think that these originally probably had color to them. They were probably really colorful, but they're all just the terracotta. And now they just have the orangey color to them, being just so old. But so many of them have been so amazingly preserved. And they all have different faces. They're all
I did know that.
So unique. So that was my number 4. That was really amazing getting to see that. And just, again, the history of it, of, how old they were. So.
I didn't know how recent the discovery was.
Yep. It was in the 1970s. So.
Imagine finding something like that. That's that ancient.
That would be so cool.
Wow. I didn't know that they were different sizes or that they were more than just the warriors.
Yeah, some of them are a little bit wider, some are skinnier and things like that. It was really cool getting to see the different faces and everything of them.
What if each one was based on an actual person?
Could have been. I mean,
that's pretty wild.
Yeah, but it was crazy that these were made, these thousands of these terracotta soldiers were made just to protect the emperor in his afterlife. That was what they thought, they needed protection in the afterlife. And so they made all of these, and, it was probably a rude awakening when he realized that none of them were protecting him.
Yeah. Well, it makes you wonder, gosh, what did he think he was going to be facing if he needed that much protection? Wow. Mine is not, well, I was going to say it's similar, sort of is. It's that part of the world. It's in Mongolia, Outer Mongolia, as it's traditionally called. There is a 130-foot steel statue of Chinggis Khan. Wow. Here in the West, we say Genghis Khan. Out away from, I don't know how far it is, probably 65K or somewhere outside of Ulaanbaatar, the capital city of Mongolia. And it's modern, but it's really cool to see. It has a platform kind of like the Statue of Liberty, and it's sort of, kind of get that image in your mind. It's kind of that size. It's not painted, it's all shiny, it's steel and gold. And it's Genghis Khan sitting on his horse with a big staff, and you can walk up inside. Like walk out on the horse's mane and head. And there's a observation deck there. And so the size of it is pretty cool to see. But for me, I just love the place.
Yeah.
So looking out and seeing the landscape there in Mongolia, of the rolling hills and the steppe, the just the smooth, short green grass that just looks like a rug just out laid over everything, and the gears, the yurts that the nomadic people still live in with their livestock just kind of dotting the hills was just a beautiful sight. It
Yeah.
looks like someone painted it. I still use it as a desktop on my wallpaper on my phone and on my computer because it reminds me of the time I was there and some of the things that God did. But it's just a beautiful place that looks like it looks fake. It looks like somebody's painted it, even when you're standing there. Genghis Khan is an interesting figure because, I mean, I wondered why they held him in such regard that someone would build a giant statue to the guy. Because from the Western conception of him, we know him as a conqueror whose empire reached all the way into Europe. And so to us, he's a bad guy of history.
Yeah.
To the Mongolians, and I suppose some Chinese, he's a national hero because he brought economic prosperity and peace and equality and education and trade to his empire. And so Mongolians credit him with a lot of the advances that they made during that time. And there's a legend that says in the Mongol Empire, you could walk from one end of it to the other with a bucket of gold on your head and nobody would bother you because the prosperity was that widely distributed and there was peace. And Khan famously was tolerant of a bunch of different religions. So he may conquer your land, but you're allowed to keep your way of life mostly as long as you don't bother other people. So that's the legend from the Mongolian perspective. And I just think that's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
People have their different vantage points on the same person or event in history, and it's totally different.
Oh, they do. And that actually leads into my number 5.
All right.
So number 5 is the Forbidden City. Again, China. The Forbidden City was really amazing. And this was the home of the emperor. And it was really beautiful and huge. It was so big. I mean, it was pretty much a city inside of Beijing and everything. And so it was really amazing. But right outside of it is Tiananmen Square. And Tiananmen Square has a lot of history. I need to update or remind myself of all the history, but there was a lot of protests that had happened, I think in the 70s, 80s, and just of the corruption and everything going on. And they ended up enacting martial law and killed a lot of civilians. But that's known about in a lot of the world. But I remember being told, if you go to China and you ask anybody there about, what are your thoughts on Tiananmen Square and like the protests, a lot of people won't know what you're talking about.
Wow.
And so that again is just, that different perspective of, what is hidden and what is known. And so, which is pretty crazy. And so, but yeah, there's Tiananmen Square and then you go into the Forbidden City and it's huge and you just see a lot of the beautiful Chinese architecture, which is really beautiful. I don't remember if this is specifically at the Forbidden City, but another area where we were, one of the teachers was showing us around and she showed us some architecture and she said, they did not use nails or screws. Everything fit perfectly together inside of itself. And so as they were building, there was no need for nails or screws. And so every piece of wood, everything that they used, they made it to where it fit perfectly inside of each other. And I thought that was really cool, just how their architecture is. It's so colorful and, there is a very specific look to Chinese architecture. And I think it's really beautiful. I love the different types of architecture all around the world, but the Forbidden City was definitely a cool place to go to just because of the history of it as well. So that was my number 5.
Closest I've been is so I've been in Beijing just for layovers and stuff, but I haven't got to tour the Forbidden City.
Yeah.
In the airport, there's a little mini museum about it, and that's the closest I've been.
Nice.
So, well, I may have driven by it, but the smog was so heavy I don't even know.
Could be, yeah.
I saw the Olympic Stadium and stuff, but
nice.
Okay. I rattled on too long about Petra, but it's just such a fascinating place that
So
we
cool.
are pushing past an hour. But I'm curious. We should talk about them again on an episode, I
Yes.
think, of our runner ups, but rattle off yours just out of
Okay,
curiosity.
yeah, okay. The Temple of Hercules, also in Jordan, along with the amphitheater near it. That was really cool.
Absolutely
Thousands of
cool.
years of history.
Absolutely cool.
I could have kept exploring that for a long time, but then everyone was ready to go, and so that one was really cool. That was a runner up. This one is Jasper National Park in Canada slash Banff National Park, and so we were
Hmm.
mainly in Jasper. Beautiful, I saw a glacier for the first time in my life, and it was just beautiful places to hike and everything. I think it's called Abraham Lake. Beautiful blue waters
Yeah.
and mountain behind it. It was so beautiful. And then my last one, again in China. There's a lot of cool things to see in China. Was a summer palace, and this was a little getaway palace for the emperor.
A
So
little lodge. It's
a
his
little
cabin.
lodge. Yeah, that was definitely not little. It was very beautiful. It, looks very summery, but you know, tired of palace life at the Forbidden City, so we're gonna make a summer palace, a getaway palace, and so got to explore that as well, and that was really beautiful. So that was another runner up. What about yours?
Amazing. I didn't even start on Germany because there's too many. And in fact, I think Germany it might have more UNESCO World Heritage sites than anywhere else. It's at least at the top of the list. It has dozens and dozens of them. Some of those are like ancient ruins that they've discovered that were Roman or like Hebrew kibbutz communities or things like that, or old Germanic tribes, but Goths, all sorts of stuff. But the castles, and there's
Oh yeah,
castles everywhere from all different eras, and so that just as a category is one of
yeah,
my absolute favorite
castles.
things. When I lived there, we used to just go to castles on the weekend, and some of them you can tour, and they're just magical
So
and
cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
Especially the Bavarian castles, like Neuschwanstein. That's the famous one everybody knows, but there's really cool ones. Um,
Cool.
so just in general, and all the other cathedrals,
Yeah.
just just cool. Okay, Meteor Crater outside Flagstaff, Arizona, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, just massive, massive, massive cave system in the
Yeah.
United States with lots and lots of history. Kathmandu Durbar Square.
Okay.
So this is an area of Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, where there are tons of shrines and temples. Now they're kind of sad, but just the architecture and the antiquity of them is really cool. Lots and lots of Hindu and Tibetan Buddhist temples there that are really, really ancient and very important to the people there.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting place to go and have spiritual conversations with people. And it was
Hmm.
just an incredible experience, an amazing privilege that God let
Yeah.
me have to go and do that. Niagara Falls, Lviv Old Town. Lviv is a city in western Ukraine that is one of the most beautiful cities I have ever
Mm.
visited. Some friends of mine live there, and I've gotten to go a couple times. It is just a gorgeous place. Lots of history, lots of art from different eras as well throughout old Ukrainian history, Jewish history, many Jewish people there. There's a Jewish quarter in town there, in World War II history there, and some of it fascinating, some of it really sad and devastating. The Messel Pit is another place in Germany that is just a huge shale quarry, sort of, with lots and lots and lots of fossils, all different kinds of fossils. This is a field trip that we took when I was a kid in Germany, and like we just rolled up in the bus, got off the bus, and had a little orientation, and you can just go like mine for fossils there on your own, just like with a little hammer breaking off pieces of
Wow.
shale and looking and seeing what kind of fossils are on there. That was
That's neat.
just, yeah, it was just fun. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Lauterbrunnen, I have a lot of runners up. I'm
You do,
feeling I'm
yes.
really cheating. Lauterbrunnen is a valley in Switzerland where
Oh man.
Tolkien dreamed up Rivendell. It was his inspiration.
Wow.
It's a lush green valley with streams and the old, half-timbered houses. And you look around and so from the lush green valley, you look up and there are snow-capped peaks all around it with waterfalls, glacial falls that are falling so far that they're missed before they even hit the ground. It is
That's neat.
an unbelievable place.
Wow.
So those are my runners-up. I just can't
Yeah.
pick favorites, but those ones had to be mentioned because they're
Yeah,
so awesome.
Switzerland sounds really beautiful, man. You've been in many places.
I've been around. So, all right. I want to keep going on and on about that and so many other things, but that's all for today. Thanks for listening and sticking with us to the end if you did. If you want to learn more, if you want to learn more about our ministry, the actual work that we do, which is why we've gone to many of these places, head over to our website, internationalcommission.org, and you can learn about job postings so you can come and work with us and maybe get to see some of these awesome things. How you can pray for us, how you can give to enable us to do what we do, and how you can go with us. You don't have to be on staff to go with us. You can go on a short-term mission partnership overseas or here in the U.S. Let's work together to equip and enable each other until everyone has had a chance to hear the good news of Jesus, whether they're in a culture that has access to the gospel or they are unreached, unengaged. Let's reach them for the gospel. Until next time.